ever since this move of Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC has been announced, it's fun to kick around and kind of project, okay, how do these programs project to a higher level of play in the SEC? And let's not take this conversation, I think, to the point where a lot of people think the SEC is basically playing professional football and everybody else is just playing college football. And I don't see the difference to being that stark a difference. It's just a week-to-week grind. There is a better level of play with more teams that are playing top 25 to 35 football in the SEC. As Oklahoma currently stands, and of course we know that Brent Venables is transitioning the roster. It's going to be a different type of roster and player that's going to go into the SEC. How do you, it's fun to kick around and look at, this is what Oklahoma's done previously for this 7 or 8 years dominating the Big 12. What would that have looked like to you in the SEC?
So you're talking basically what do you think they would have done under Lincoln Riley?
They lose an extra game per season on average.
I think that's a really interesting discussion. And to be honest with you, I don't have a great answer because, look, if I'm being completely honest, I think the best answer I can give you is I think they probably would have been a 7-8 win team a year. Maybe they win 9 or 10 games if they get a favorable schedule. But I think the reality is over the course of the Lincoln Riley era, and you saw it whenever they had to go up against SEC teams in the postseason, they just weren't built to handle it. And they were the cream of the crop in the Big 12 for sure. But the SEC, as they say, it just means more, right? It's a whole different ballgame down there. And you got to be fearsome up front. That's one of the things that, like I said, Brent Venables is emphasizing, and they're going to have to emphasize because you can't get pushed around and win football games in the SEC. So I think that's the biggest thing for me as I look at what this team might have done in the SEC had they made the move 5 years ago. Is after 2018, when they had that tremendous offensive line that sent 5 starters to the NFL and they won the Joe Moore Award, anytime after 2018, I'm not convinced that the Sooners' offensive line would have held up. Their defensive line was star-studded. As recently as this past season, you had Isaiah Thomas, Jalen Redmond, Nick Bonito, Perrion Winfrey, all on that defensive line. They're all going to be day 1 or day 2 NFL draft picks. So I think there was a lot of talent on that defensive line. The scheming from Alex Grinch really didn't allow that defensive line to realize their full potential in Oklahoma's defense. So I think there were a lot of problems that this team had, both in terms of personnel and scheming, well, and culturally for that matter. But there were a lot of issues that this team had that I think were shielded or obfuscated by the reality that they were playing football in the Big 12, which, it's in years past, it's been neck and neck with the Pac-12 for the easiest football conference to navigate across the entire country in the Power 5. And so Oklahoma in the SEC over the last 5 years probably they maybe would have gotten to an SEC championship game at some point. I'm not convinced they would have won that conference at any point in time.
Well, I certainly think the Pac-12 has taken over that distinction. But the Big 12 certainly had its detractors 3 to 4 or 5 years ago, especially. I'll have to do an edit there.